welcome. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Immigration Enforcement and Handling ICE Visits. Today is presented in partnership with the Grady Firm. My name is Anna. I'm the Digital Media and Event Strategist here at the California Employers Association. And again, we just want to thank you for taking your lunch hour and joining us live today. I have the great pleasure of introducing our President and CEO here at California Employers Association, Kim Guzman. Hi, Kim.
Hello, thank you so much. With over 600 people registered for today, you'll notice that there is a big CEA crew here, along with Jennifer Grady, to make sure that we're making this run smooth and seamless and that we get all of your questions answered. So again, please use the Q&A, not the chat, if you've got a question. We've got our fabulous Juliana Gabriel and our fabulous Virginia Young. They are our compliance directors, our HR compliance directors. So they will be fast and furious on the Q&A box, answering as many questions as they can for you. And then anything that they're not able to answer, they'll be saving those questions and either gently interrupting Jennifer during the presentation, or we're also going to be saving 10 minutes at the end to just pepper Jennifer with a whole bunch of questions that you have. And she'll stay on as long as we need to. So we really want to make sure we get those all of your questions answered today. So I've introduced Juliana and Virginia Young, again, our HR compliance directors. I also want to introduce Eli Nunez. So Eli will be our facilitator and hosting this event, along with our co-host Jennifer Grady, who I'll introduce to you in a moment. And then again, thanks so much to our event coordinator, Anna Manzano. She will be watching the chat box, answering your questions there, and giving you some really valuable links throughout the presentation. So let's talk a little bit about why we're here today. I think we all know the answer to that, right? We have a new administration, and part of that administration's promises were to do some mass deportations and to have more border security. And again, CEA, we are neutral. We are not a political party here. We are not for Republicans or for Democrats. We're here to just provide you with information and the most current up-to-date employment laws that are going on in California. So we know that the White House spokeswoman has said that, hey, if you're an undocumented immigrant, you're going to be seen by this administration as a criminal. And the Trump administration is hoping and expecting ICE's 25 different field offices to make up to 75 arrests a day. And so this is huge, right? That's why we're talking about this. You as an employer may be concerned about, what do I do if ICE comes knocking at my door? I wish about 20 years ago that when ICE came knocking at my door, I was the HR and safety manager for a large glass manufacturing company. And I had ICE agents show up and they served me a warrant and I just kind of froze, you know, I didn't know what to do. I knew that I had a very large Hispanic workforce. I also know I worked really hard to make sure everybody there were compliant, that we filled out I-9s, that I was compliant with all the laws, but still I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. And so, you know, they served me a warrant. I talked with them. And then I was able to determine by discussing with them that, hey, I didn't have to give them anything right away. I actually had a few days to get my ducks in a row. And they left me with the warrant and I was able to go through my I-9s. I notified all my employees, but I will tell you, I had about 25% of my employees leave after they heard that ICE was coming. And so then ICE came on site and they went through my all of my I-9s and there were some issues and there were some problems. I did not end up getting any citations issued, but it was incredibly disruptive to my workforce. And I learned a lot throughout the process. And I wish to goodness I would have had somebody like Jennifer Grady. I wish I would have known her because I would have had her on speed dial from day one. And so we are thrilled and excited to have Jennifer Grady with us here today. I just want to introduce you to her because I think you're going to just love what she has to say. And I feel like I'm very grateful that we have her. Not only is she an immigration attorney and she founded her own law firm 13 years ago, but she's also a corporate trainer and she's also an international speaker. So she's just an amazing talent. We're lucky to have her here. She helps employers and employees when it comes to immigration law. She helps employers bring qualified workers from abroad. She does business law, immigration law, and employment law. So Jennifer, let you say a word or two before we get into the presentation, but I want to say thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And she was on our board about 7 years ago. So I've had the privilege of knowing her for over 7 years now.
Well, time flies, and it's always great to see you, Kim. Really enjoy your enthusiasm for helping employers stay compliant and be prepared. So I'm really excited to be here today and tell you a little bit about what I know as an immigration attorney and someone who's worked with employers for many years. And the way I come from is always being prepared, being ready, being compliant, especially in California. We've already known that for a long time, but in terms of immigration and all this compliance, there has been a really big increase in the need for compliance in the last few months alone. And just preparing for this webinar was really enlightening. There's so much news happening, probably on an hourly basis. I can't keep up with writing enough blogs because there's so many changes, but it's real at this point. So we do need to be prepared. I have had a neighbor get stopped in Newport Beach and they asked for her papers. And even Kim's had an example. So there's a lot going on. So the important thing is don't panic, be prepared, just the way we would be with earthquake drills and fire drills. You don't want to be figuring it out right then and there how to do it. You want to have a plan. You want to know who to involve, where to go, what to do. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Great, great. And again, because there are so many of you today, many of you are members and we love you and we thank you for being members and we're glad to keep providing with great service. For those of you that aren't members, just a real quick note about CEA. We are a 501c6 not-for-profit employers association. So what does that mean? Well, just like a plumbers association or a dental association or a teachers association, we're all about bringing peace of mind to employers. So it doesn't matter whether you're small, medium, or large. It doesn't matter what industry you are. If you need help when it comes to things in the employee life cycle, from the beginning of the employment relationship to the end of the employment relationship, we're here to help you out. We do that very inexpensively. Members get to enjoy free employment advice over the phone. Monday through Friday between 8 to 5. We also have live chat, and we've got a plethora of information on our website, toolkits and worksheets and forms and fact sheets, all kinds of great stuff. So we're just here to help, again, bring employers peace of mind when it comes to HR support, HR training, and leadership training. So we do have attorneys on our staff, but we are not your attorneys. Really, the only person talking today that's an attorney is Jennifer Grady. And again, she's not your attorney unless you were to contract individually with her. So everything we're going to share with you today is not legal advice. It's information, it's educational. And again, we will give you Jennifer, you have Jennifer's contact information. So if you do feel like you need an immigration attorney, we encourage you to reach out to her. If you need another type of attorney, we have many different partners on our website, employers.org. So we encourage you to reach out to them. Without further ado, I also want to turn it back over now to Eli, who's going to kick us off and kind of go through today's agenda. Again, we have a bunch to get through, but we're giving you copies of the slides. We're going to give you a recording. So, and we're going to stay on after to answer your questions. So Eli, the stage is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you for that great introduction. And thank you everybody for joining us today. Some of the things we'll be covering for you and hopefully answering some of your questions, of course, are why we should care, right? What are the penalties for hiring undocumented employees? As you know, I mean, there is always the carrot and there's a stick, right? So we have to be careful of that stick. We have to be careful to know what the penalties are in case we do find themselves in that position. In case there is a visit from ICE or any government entity, we want to know what kind of visits those are and what those look like. We've heard of ICE raids. You know, Kim mentioned a inspection that she went through and that sort of thing. So there's different types of visits. We're going to talk about the different kinds and what you can expect from them. The I-9 process. I mean, I-9 inspections are something that can happen. The I-9 process is so important, so we want to make sure that we get it right from the beginning. So we're going to talk about that and also what you can do to go back and audit those I-9s to make sure that they look good, right? Last thing you want to do is get in trouble because of sloppy paperwork. And if you've been on any of our CA past presentations, you know that we are big fans of documentation and doing things right the first time. So we'll discuss that a little bit. We'll talk about how you prepare for an ICE visit. You know, whether you're at risk or not, it's always great to be prepared. You know, I mean, whether it's gonna happen. If it happens or not, whatever the case, you want to make sure that you're ready, you have things in place, and that you're addressing any issues before they happened. When ICE shows up, if they show up with any documentation, we want to know what the difference is, what documentation we expect, what kind of warrants and that sort of thing. So we'll go into detail on that a little bit, as well as what are your rights as an employer and your employees' rights. Very important to know what those are, where we stand, and what we can do. And finally, we'll talk about how we develop a plan to prepare for ICE. And Jennifer will give us some great pointers on that, some things to keep in mind and some things to look for. So we'll kick it off with some of the risks for noncompliance. In other words, if you do get a visit or some kind of audit and there are some issues found, what can happen? And those penalties, as you can see, can add up really quickly. Now, initially, there could be civil violation or civil penalties that could range from a couple $100s all the way up to several $1,000s based on what kind of offense it is, right? How many you have and that sort of thing. So those are civil violations, basically penalties. Things can get really serious though if you are found to or accused of knowingly hiring or continue to employ unauthorized employees or unauthorized people, or even if you're found to be harboring any people that are in the country illegally. Then those fines can really climb up and become criminal penalties at that point and be accompanied by possibly jail time, seizure of assets, or that sort of thing. So again, those penalties can possibly escalate very quickly. Not trying to scare you. I'm just telling you what is out there, what is potentially out there in the books, and what's at stake. So that's why we want to make sure that we want to have everything in place, have all our documentation correct, make sure we're following all the right processes to help mitigate some of these risks.
And Eli, there's actually a formula that they would use when calculating these.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have this reduced if you have mitigating circumstances or increased if it's things like repeat violations or knowing violations. So that's how they get to those great numbers.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're found to be someone that's a repeat offender, someone that's basically making a habit of it or making a practice of doing these illegal hirings, then things can definitely escalate and you can find yourself in hot water. Great point. Thanks, Jennifer. Now, when we talk about who might come to visit, right now everything we hear about is ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. But again, there are several agencies that can pay a visit to your organization. We could be visited by not only ICE, but the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, and there's also the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. They're the folks that put out those I-9 forms for us and basically, oversee any kind of immigration process, and of course the Border Patrol as well. Keep in mind that it's not just one agency. Sometimes there could be a combination of different agencies that show up, right? So you can have visited by ICE and DHS, or maybe even local law enforcement in some instances. So again, it's not just one agency. Sometimes it could be several showing up at once, and you have to be prepared for that. Now, we saw earlier in the year that there were some immigration enforcement actions taking place around the Kern County area here in California as well. That was done by ICE, DHS, maybe Customs and Border Protection, that sort of thing. So again, it's just dependent on who is going to show up and what are they looking for. So in some cases, they could be there for an audit, looking for somebody in particular, or even just doing an inspection because they received a tip or they're just out looking for any kind of infraction, right? As Kim mentioned, I mean, there has been an established target or quota, if you will, as to how many people are to be deported or detained. So you can bet that some of these agencies are out there, beating the bushes trying to meet those numbers. Now, when it comes to the purpose of those visits, again, it could be just there to audit your I-9s or your documentation. And these are possibly more common than we think. I mean, just in the year 2024, it's reported that ICE delivered more than 5,200 I-9 audit notices in the US. So average it out, that's quite a bit, right? They could also be there to detain a specific person. So they're looking for a specific person, someone that maybe has an order to be removed or some kind of warrant for their detention. So they could be there just for somebody specifically, or even for verification if you have any H-1B or H-2B or any other kind of type of employee, they can show up just to verify that everything is in line there. Again, you know, the purpose of the visit itself may not be related to any of these. In some cases, it could just be, they targeted a certain area, certain city, so they're going around to try to elicit some kind of response or some kind of reaction from the employees there. So many different reasons why they could visit. So you have to be aware of that, and know what to prepare for in those cases. So with that, I'll hand it off to Jennifer to tell us a little more about those I-9 inspections, what we can expect, and what those look like.
Thank you, Eli. So in terms of I-9 inspections, you'll be covering this also in your additional webinar, but this would be inspecting to make sure that all the I-9s are completed, signed correctly, and everyone in your office is authorized to work. So as you know, this must be completed within 3 days of hire, and you must be having the employees sign it and the authorized employer to sign it as well. So if ICE is requesting your I-9s, then they'll present you with a notice of inspection, and you have 3 days in order to provide those records. So if they come and they show up, that doesn't mean, okay, just come into our office, go look through our file cabinets and see what you find. You want to be very particular about this. You want to get with your counsel, and you want to look through it, and then you give it to them at the end of the 72-hour period. And then you're also going to want to let your employees know about this. You can post this in the office, you can send it in writing. And then if there's anything that they need to do to update you, that might be a good time to do it. But ideally, you have done your own I-9 audit ahead of time, so that when they show up, you're not going to be nervous, and you're already going to know that you've either corrected any errors or let anyone go who could not show authorization. And that when you hand those over, you'll be in good hands. Otherwise, you could be getting penalties and then told that you need to let people go if they're unable to show their authorization. And so in terms of if once they go and look through the documents, if they find any deficiencies, then they will let you know. And then you'll have to tell the employee if there are any government findings, what those are, any other relevant information, and you'll want to have that in writing, if not in person as well.
Yeah, very important to know what those timeframes are as far as, passing that information along to the employees too. You want to make sure that you're keeping them informed in case of an audit or in case something is found so they have a chance to respond and make any corrections. So thank you for that. Now, when it comes time to completing the I-9 form, I mean that, as you can tell, that's very important because that document itself, that's showing that you're doing your due diligence to make sure the person is eligible to work in the United States. So you want to make sure of a few things, right? You always want to make sure that you're using the most current version of the I-9. And if you subscribe to our blog, you just receive a lovely message. They let you know that, hey, that they just USCIS just went through and spruced up the I-9 a little bit. They made a couple changes. So you want to make sure you're using the latest version. And that's the latest version that's labeled edition January 20th, 2025. The changes that they made recently were not very drastic. It's just basically a few changes to some of the terms or terminology used in the I-9 to match the ideology that the current administration is using. So for instance, they replaced the term non-citizen with alien on there, and they also removed the term gender and replaced it with sex in certain sections. The other thing you want to do is make sure that whoever's completing those I-9s on the company side knows what they're doing. That's easy to say, right? But again, there's some training that can be done there. The USCIS has some resources for that, some training. They have a booklet that helps you know how to complete that. So again, you want to make sure that whoever your company representative is that's in charge of I-9s, whether it's your hiring manager, HR manager, supervisor, whatever it is, they're familiar with the form, they know what's required, and they know what to look for. So again, once the employee completes their section, they complete their section, you want to go through it to make sure that it's filled out correctly. All the signatures are in the right place, the correct boxes are checked, there's no information missing.
Sure. And in terms of finding the current version, you can either check in the CEA portal or go to the uscis.org .org website or .gov website and just go to the top and put I-9. I do this with all my immigration forms because they change so often. And if you have the wrong version, it could be rejected, or in the case of I-9, could be a problem. So always go there, and then there's a drop down that says additions. That's where you'll see the latest one. And then we put some FAQs from USCIS. They're here with a link, and then the instructions. Every form that USCIS has also has instructions. And then in terms of the video, I had found certain clients would consistently fill these out incorrectly. So I went through and made a video online where I showed it and highlighted and circled. And that might be a good thing for you to do with your HR, especially if there's more than one person doing them or their managers, to make sure everyone's signing in the right place. And in terms of documents, there is the attachment that has the particular documents by category you can present. And then if people are on different visas, they might have different available documents. So you'd really want to familiarize yourself with that if an I-94 is going to be valid, if they actually need an EAD card, so that you're ready when people with those different visas come to do their I-9s.
And something very important to keep in mind too is just because the version of the I-9 changes doesn't mean you have to go back and complete a new I-9 for all your existing employees. Once you complete an I-9 and you verify that they're okay to work there, file it away, you're good to go. Now, aside from just initially filling out that I-9 when you hire people, you want to make sure that you're going back and checking those I-9s, conduct an audit. Jennifer mentioned earlier the importance of this too. And I mean, sometimes those simple mistakes, if we leave something out, we leave a box unchecked or a signature missing, that could be a red flag, right? That could lead to, in case of an audit, possibly more things being inspected or more things being looked into. So it's low-hanging fruit. Make sure that your I-9s are correct. So you want to make sure you go through, you're auditing your I-9s, and we want to do this pretty regularly because, as you know, there's turnover, there's new people being hired, people leaving, that sort of thing. So we recommend doing them regularly, at least annually. Just go through your I-9s, take a look, make sure that everything is filled out correctly, everything is in place. If you catch any mistakes on there, don't white out the mistake and correct it. If you have to make any corrections, put a memo on there or some kind of form attached to it explaining when you did the audit, what you found, and what you did to correct it. That's going to show that, by performing the audit and correcting these issues, it's going to show that you're making a good faith effort as an employer to have the correct information on there and to make sure that you're following the requirements of the U.S. government. If you need any help conducting that audit, we do have a very comprehensive toolkit that CEA put together that walks you through the process. You can also find more guidance on auditing those I-9 forms through the USCIS as well. They have a lot of resources on their page, but again, we went through and we try to simplify the process as much as possible, give you some pointers and some additional forms and documents that you can use when you're performing that audit in-house.
And then if you are going to do an audit, you want to communicate that to the employees and be very transparent. I do recommend, depending on the size of your company, that you either audit everyone or you do random audits, and you don't want to be targeting anybody. Maybe you think someone based on their last name or appearance might not be having work authorization, so you don't want to do that. USCIS, if you read their FAQs about it, they just keep repeating, we don't want to discriminate, we don't want to discriminate. So if you can, I would recommend going through all of them. And then in terms of what to do if you find the errors, you already said, cross it out, don't white it out, put the memo. That will help with the mitigating circumstances.
Absolutely. Just being consistent, right? Consistent. Just audit all the I-9s and make sure you stay on track for it so it doesn't get out of hand. A few other things to keep in mind too with the I-9 and E-Verify process. Make sure that you have an I-9 for each new employee hired, right? And there's, retention requirements and that sort of thing. But again, as soon as you hire a new employee, you have 3 business days to complete that I-9. So make it a part of your onboarding process, make it a part of their first day in the office. You're walking them around, showing them where the bathrooms and the break rooms are. Don't forget to do that I-9. It's very important. As Jennifer mentioned, we're not discriminating against individuals based on national origin, citizenship, appearance, language, ethnicity, nothing like that. The I-9 requirement is for all employees, regardless of any of those different categories. So make sure we're following the same process for everybody. You don't need a 9-9 for independent contractors or their employees. The I-9 is just for your employees, so make sure they keep that in mind. And when it comes to retention, you're going to hold on to those I-9s for either 3 years from the date of hire or 1 year after the employee is no longer with you, whichever one is longer. And it looks like Juliana came in. Do you have any outstanding questions out there?
We have a few coming in if you think we have time to address some on I-9. We're getting a lot of questions on when you need to revisit the I-9 form. And I think you already answered that, Eli, that just because there's a new updated version of the I-9 form doesn't mean that you need to go back and recomplete. But if you could spend just a minute or so on when do you need to revisit it in like a re-verification situation, either Eli or Jennifer, if you want to take that one.
So re-verification would be if somebody has work authorization that's expiring and you would want to show that they still have an updated visa or green card or a basis for employment. That's one option. Anything else, Eli?
Yeah, I'd say be aware, and we get this question a lot. If someone has a permanent resident card that's expired, they ask, do I have to re-verify that? The answer is no. If it's a permanent resident card with an expiration date, you do not have to re-verify or recertify that because it's right in the name. They're a permanent resident. The card expired, but their permanent residency did not, so their eligibility is still active. So again, just if it's an employment authorization, you want to make sure you're re-verifying those. So maybe you flag those in your I-9 booklet or something to make sure that you go back and check them, or you put a calendar reminder for yourself or something to know that those are ones that you're going to have to go back and re-verify at a certain point in time.
And
Thank you. I'll let you guys keep rolling along here and we'll keep answering questions. I'll probably pop back in again. Sure. Thank you.
Another question we get from time to time, I'll throw this one to Jennifer too, is when it comes to documentation, do I have to keep copies of the documents the employee presents for the I-9? So if they give me, show their driver's license or security, do I have to keep copies of that, or what's the best practice for that? What do you think?
You don't have to keep them, but I personally would recommend it because that way you can show later on if there were an issue, okay, we did inspect their driver's license or we did inspect their documents, and you're not expected to be the authority on whether it's a forgery or not, but it's going to be kind of a good faith looking at it. And then if you did have an audit, you could say, well, they presented it to me and that was what I was given. I do recommend that you have all your files separate from the personnel files and have a separate I-9 file. So that way, if anyone is to do an audit, they would only look at those and not poke around at your personnel files and get other documentation. And I was going to say another good time to mention the documents to bring on your first day of employment is in the offer letter. And I always put in my client offer letters to say that their employment is contingent on the ability to show they have authorization to work in the United States. And I had a client who took over and purchased a business and invited the current employees to come and work for them. And we did have that in the letter saying, bring your documentation and come that day. But I know that some didn't work at the business because they didn't have I-9s, they didn't have any documentation before. So people may self select there if they know that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, maybe that's a great idea. I mean, maybe attach that list of documents that comes with the I-9 to the offer letter so they know what to bring on that first day so they're not guessing. The other thing too is, be consistent too. If you're going to make copies of the documents, if that's your process, do it for all your employees, not just for certain employees, again, just to maintain that consistency and make sure that it doesn't look like we're selecting certain groups or discriminating against certain groups. So something else that kind of goes hand in hand with the I-9 process is E-Verify. And the thing to keep in mind about E-Verify is it's not mandatory in the state of California for all employers. There's certain cases, if it's a federal project or something, a government-based project, where they can request that the employees go through the I-9 process. But again, it's not something that's required for private employers in the state of California. And honestly, I don't think in most states it's not something that is required. E-Verify is a free service. It's offered by the U.S. government, by USCIS. And thing to keep in mind is it's not a replacement for the I-9 process. You still have to fill out an I-9 for any new employee, but it kind of goes hand in hand. You enter the information and it gives you electronically gives you a result whether that person is eligible to work in the United States or not. So it ties into different databases or whatever it is. So, again, the thing with the E-Verify is if you become an E-Verify employee, if you sign up for it, you don't really go back, or you shouldn't go back and E-Verify your existing employees, right? It's not something that you use to check your existing employees unless you're required to do so through a government order, government contract, that sort of thing. But once you do sign up for E-Verify, you have to E-Verify any new employee going forward. So again, it's free service, and it's again another way to bring peace of mind, right? If you're not sure about the documents, or again, you're not a documents expert, you want that extra peace of mind to know, hey, how do I know if this person really is eligible to work or not? Sign up for E-Verify, enter that information, and you will get that result as well. I mean, as everything else, that's got its pros and cons, but it's a free service, so if nothing else, we got that going for us. Let's talk a little bit about what you can do to prepare for a nice visit. So what are some of the steps you can take? I'll hand it over to Jennifer. Let us know some good things to do to prepare if ICE should come knocking.
Okay, so remember, preparation is your friend. You don't want to be experiencing this for the first time like Kim did, and that's why she's here to help us put this together, so that you don't have that same experience. I think that when you're not ready, you might say things that you don't want to do. And the main thing we want to do is say as little as possible, cooperate, and only give them what they request specifically if it has a judicial warrant. So what we want to do is figure out what areas do you have that are public, like a lobby, because the officers are allowed to enter those public areas, but not the private areas. So if you do have private areas, you want to mark those private, keep them locked, and you want to find out who is your greeter, who's the first person they're going to encounter. It might be a receptionist. If you don't have one, it might be a person closest to the door. So absolutely, you want to train them, any of your frontline people. And then you want to figure out who is your authorized agent. Is that the CEO? Is it HR? And then they're going to be the ones that will be needing to know what to say. So in terms of preparation, we talked a lot about the I-9 audit. If you've already done that, you can be a lot more confident if they come asking you for this. And I do recommend that you have a worksheet, which we'll provide after this presentation. And that would be where you would write down who the names of your employees are, who your agent is, and then who your attorney is. You wouldn't want to be looking on Yelp or the internet trying to find an attorney in the middle of this visit, would you? No, that just wouldn't work at all. So what you would want to do is contact several attorneys first, interview them, see who is knowledgeable in the area, what they can do to help you, and have their phone number and contact information. If there's multiple people in the firm, you may want to have other numbers as well. Have that ready to go, and you can even have a G28 signed, and that's having someone as counsel of record. So when they come in, you would say, please, you need to speak with the employer, and then you would also be calling your attorney as well. It's possible they could come down and visit or be present on the phone. And so you would maybe have that taped in a desk drawer or somewhere easy on the computer that it's easy to find. Let's see. So if we can just go to the next slide. They may be showing up with other agencies. They may be coming with guns. They may have uniforms that say police or federal agents. So it could be shock and awe. So you just need to remember to be calm. So in terms of what areas they could enter without a court order or warrant, those are public areas like the lobby, parking lot, reception, anything like that. So once they enter, you would say, I cannot give you permission to enter. You must speak with my employer unless they present you with the warrant. And then do we have our slides on that?
Yeah, that kind of leads to the next question. Do we have to let them in without a warrant? So sounds like the warrant is the key to let them in. So what do we need to know about warrants?
So there are several types of warrants. So the one that would allow them to come in would be a judicial search warrant. That's going to be signed by a judge of a court, either federal or state. And it should be specific. It should have a time frame when they could come. It should specifically identify any documents, say it were I-9 or personnel files, and it should be signed by a judge. Now, if we have Arrest warrants, that's also signed by a judge, but it doesn't grant access to private areas. And then we have the administrative warrant, which is going to be by ICE or DHS. That may be to arrest a specific person. There is a form, I-200 or I-205. You can see that, and we're going to have a slide to show you what it would look like. And that does not grant access to private areas. So first, you just want to say, do we have to do this now? Can you come back another time? If they have a warrant and it's very specific and you've looked at it, it's signed, it's got the date, then they may come in anyway and not wait for you. So in that case, we'll talk about what to do if they actually do come into your business.
And we do have a snapshot of what a judicial versus a immigration warrant looks like. It's a small picture, obviously, but once you get the slides and some other supplemental information along with a couple links, you'll be able to see what the difference in those are and what to look for.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Jennifer. Anna put a great resource in the chat box from the National Immigration Law Center on the different warrants and subpoenas and some photos. So take a look in your chat box as well.
Sure, we didn't want you to see this for the first time from an officer. So in terms of judicial warrant, it will have the name of the court at the top, which is circled. It will have the address of what they're coming to look at. So maybe it's easy to say that's not our address, so you can't come in. It will have the date that it could start, what areas and property could be searched. So if it's not listed here, then you don't want to give them access to that area. And is it actually signed, and does it have their name on it? And that's something that you could even Google to see, is that a real judge? We don't want anybody coming in fraudulently or pretending to be something, but we also don't want to refuse in case it really is real. The immigration warrant, that's also available publicly, and this is going to mention an individual and what the reason is that they're there for. So, and then that would be signed as well by an immigration officer.
Excellent. And now tell us a little more about how we can prepare for an ICE visit, just kind of high level sort of thing.
So in terms of preparing, you would want to have a meeting, we already said, with your frontline people, but you also want to have a meeting with your employees. They're the ones that might be scared and they may be nervous. They may be asking you about this. So you would want to tell them that they have the right to remain silent, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. They don't have to answer anything. They don't have to move. So they may come in and say, all right, everyone who's authorized to work, come on this side of the room or on that side. They don't have to do that. So you don't want to be the one instructing them, don't answer, don't do this. That could be obstructing, but you do want to maybe tell them in advance that they have the right to remain silent. You have a right to request an attorney. And then having this plan in writing, having everybody aware of what's happening. We don't want people running or leaving the room. Obviously, that's going to raise suspicion and turn into a fight or chasing. So we don't want anything like that. We want to be calm and collected. And if the officers do come, you want to get their badge numbers, get their name, take a copy of whatever they bring to you. If they're asking to see confidential or any documents, for example, that are privileged by attorney-client relationship, you wouldn't want to share that. But if there is something that's really crucial, maybe you would say, that's important, we don't want to give that out. Do we have to? And then copy anything they take. You may want to video them if they are looking at things, take notes. And then if you weren't able to get with your legal counsel during the visit, call them immediately after and tell them everything that happened. So you really want to write that down so you have your records. And then if you do object to something and it's overruled or ignored, you want to at least write that down, and then you could potentially use that later if you needed it.
A little bit more about where these protections come from, if you would too. I mean, we talk
Sure.
about,
So we have constitutional rights, and the Fourth Amendment protects immigrants and U.S. citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. So for that reason, we have a warrant so that not anybody can come in here and touch anything and be poking around. Or if you give consent. So if you don't give consent, and they don't have a warrant, they can't come in. If you don't give consent, but they do have a valid warrant, then they still maybe be able to come in. So it's important to know that. And then for everyone, we have our Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate ourselves and to remain silent. So that is where employees don't have to answer questions. They don't have to show their documents. They can verbally say, I choose to remain silent, or they can just remain silent. And then we have a document later that they can hand over if they don't want to talk at all. So again, remain silent, ask for an attorney, and that can stop any interrogations.
Excellent. Thank you. And let's talk a little about, safety and the rights when it comes to your employees. Now, some steps you can take to make sure your employees are taken care of, are safe, and really prepared for that. Before any kind of ICE visit, it's a great practice just to make sure all of your employees' contact information and emergency contacts are up to date. And this is something you can do on a yearly basis, do it during open enrollment, or do it every few months or something. For a couple reasons, right? Practical reason at work, if someone gets injured, you want to know that you're contacting the right person and you could do it in a timely manner. The other thing is if you do have some kind of immigration enforcement action and someone is detained or taken away, you want to be able to know who to contact. Keep in mind, I mean, our employees could have families, they could have children at school or something, so we may need somebody to contact somebody to go keep things going at home for them. So again, make sure that their contact information, their emergency contacts, that sort of thing, they're all up to date so that you know who to reach out to should something happen. Make sure employees know what their rights and protections are. Jennifer just discussed those constitutional protections that apply to everybody here in the U.S. So make sure that they're aware of that, and also, give them some resources. I mean, knowledge, knowledge of what our rights are, knowledge of what we can do, that sort of thing is very, very important. Very useful for employees to know, what are my rights, what can I do, and what should I do if anything happens in the workplace.
Mhm. And if
And
your
with
visit takes
uh,
several hours, that's where you would want to tell people or find out if they had obligations like picking up children from school.
sure.
Is someone else going to have to take over? Are they now hungry and thirsty because it's been so long? So you want to be in tune with what's happening. They're human beings, not just employees. So that is where we might get a little bit more involved in making sure everything is going okay.
Absolutely. And, we mentioned some resources for employees. I know we have a list of some they could reach out to. Jennifer, do you have any other ideas or any other places where employees can get some resources or some help?
Sure. I think we have some mentioned on the slide, but when I was doing more research for this presentation, I found National Immigration Law Center had a lot of really great up-to-date blogs about all the changes and FAQs. We have Immigrant Legal Resource Center. There is the American Immigration Lawyers Association I'm a member of. They are always doing memos. California Civil Rights Department, Office of the Attorney General. That's if you have any complaints. And then I do recommend that you also look into some local pro bono law firms. For example, one might be, uh, let's see, different legal counsel that you can check in your area that might be able to help in case anybody is detained or deported, that they could help, and you would have that already ready to go. And you can share that with their families.
Absolutely. And earlier you mentioned the form or the paperwork that the employees can have that kind of reminds them of their rights, so they can present to
Mhm.
to the immigration. Here's a copy of what that looks like, and we also have the link on the previous page where they could find that in different languages.
Yeah, so they can just keep this in their wallet, and if they're detained or stopped, even if they're out in public, walking around or driving, they can just hand this over, and then that way they don't have to speak. And if they don't speak if they speak another language and they have an accent, maybe they don't want to put that out there and raise suspicion. So this is an easy way to do this.
Yeah, and these are everywhere. I mean, I went to pick up one of my kids from school yesterday, went to the office, and they had a kiosk with these little cards printed out in all kinds of different languages. So they're everywhere. I mean, it's a free resource for your employees. So great stuff to have out there. So I'll hand it off to you a little bit, Jennifer. Talk to us a little more about how you develop a workplace plan for an ICE visit and how you prepare. What are some of the steps that we take?
Sure. Okay. So we had already mentioned deciding who is authorized to speak with the company and you'll be determining if ICE is allowed to enter without a warrant, recording any information, agency names, badge numbers. So we can also have this in our handout, and it can prompt you with what things to take in case this occurs. You'll have had your attorney picked out, and then who else should be notified. And we didn't talk yet a little bit about after the visit, what might happen after the visit. So it could continue to go on for months, kind of if you were to receive an IRS audit, they'll come and get the information, and then they're going to be looking at that on their own time. It could take months to do it. So you want to keep that in mind. And then there may be undercover surveillance where they're checking out to see if people are still coming or what's happening there. So that's something that you want to be aware of. If anyone is terminated, you would want to pay their wages and vacation in compliance with labor laws. If they're terminated, it would be the same day. And again, having a list of lawyers or organizations that can help out if someone is actually detained.
Of course, having in mind, with that plan, if you do get the visit, what are you going to do with the agents, right? Do you have them wait in the lobby? Do you have them wait in the conference room? How do you minimize that disruption to your workforce and to your workplace is so important because, you want to prevent any kind of panicked response or any kind of, any kind of huge disruption out there. So I think that's where having that plan really is going to be helpful.
And depending if it's in a separate room, you can keep it quiet while you figure it out. And if they need to stay, or if we can delay this a while, if it's a big room where they're coming in with officers, then it might be pandemonium. So again, that's why it's really important to train every employee from top to bottom and let them know if this happens, we'll be prepared. Just take a deep breath and we'll handle it and we'll work it out. The more you're sweating, the more that it's going to raise suspicion.
Definitely. Now, and this leads to a question. We talked about having a plan. Do you think is this a requirement to have a ICE visit plan like the IIPP or the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan? And if it's not a requirement, do you advise having a written plan?
Sure. So it is not required, but it is important enough that CEA, we're putting on this presentation here. And now that we know things are really heating up and people are getting stopped, people are getting visited, more things are happening. It would only be hurtful if you didn't do one, honestly. So I would recommend doing it, having it in writing, because when we're nervous, we can't think clearly. So we want to have something with instructions that says, step one, do this, step one, do that. And then here's the things that you'll need to record.
Very true. And keep it updated, right? I mean, like any other plan or any other document, just things change, people, move on. So make sure we keep that updated. So that's great advice. Thank you. And some other things to keep in mind too when we talk about, how do we ice proof our workplace? How do we, make our place safer for both us as employers and as our employees. And things to keep in mind, if you have any areas that are restricted or off limits, make sure that they're clearly labeled. Remember, ICE can go into any public areas. So if there's any kind of, you know, gray area or something's not clearly marked, it can easily be confused or alleged to be a public area. So make sure if there's something that's just employees only or private or anything like that, make sure label it. You're right, whether you're buying a sign or creating your own and laminating it, whatever it is. The other thing is, Jennifer mentioned the privacy, right? Making sure any kind of documents, computer screens, anything with sensitive information, be aware of that. Not just for if I shows up at your workplace, but if anybody shows up, is that information that you want anybody having access to? So be aware of that and make sure that you're keeping that in mind and addressing it. So things to do if you do get that visit from ICE, if they show up at your door, whether it's, 2 agents or 20, whatever it is. I know it's easier said than done, but you want to stay calm. You know, Preparation is going to help with this. Be professional and limit your answers. Just answer their questions. We're not going to lie. We're not going to be aggressive. We're not going to be confrontational, but we're just going to limit our answers directly to their questions. Find out what the purpose of the visit is. So hopefully they present a warrant to you, or they should present a warrant if they're going to enter the premises, or if they're there for an I-9 audit or something, ask for documentation, ask for the reason of the visit, and put your plan in place. If that means calling legal counsel, get on the phone with them, let them know what's going on, and either have them walk you through the process or have them head on over to help you with it. Again, we're cooperating with these federal agents, because at the end of the day, that's what they are. They're federal agents. So we're not there to make a confrontation. We're not there to, you know, get behind our trenches or anything. We're going to cooperate and provide only the necessary information, nothing beyond what is needed. So we're going to limit our answers and protect the privacy of our organization, ourselves, and our employees. And again, as Jennifer mentioned, document that visit. If you can, take pictures, video, otherwise take names, badge numbers, any kind of note, what different agencies were there. And of course, don't run. And remind your employees, do not run. Anyone that's seen fleeing the workplace can be detained for questioning or for looking suspicious, if you will. So remain calm, have that plan in place, conduct those ICE drills just so everybody knows what to do if that day arrives.
And if you're the person who is the agent, think of yourself as the gatekeeper. You're protecting your business and protecting people from saying anything that they shouldn't say or anything incriminating, but you're still being cooperative and helping out if they really have a legal basis to access this information.
So that will open it up. If there's any burning questions out there, anything that we can address, we'd love to hear from you.
The questions just keep coming in. So yes, we have some questions for you. I'll kick us off, Virginia, and then I'll let you jump in too. But with ICE or an enforcement agency requesting I-9, someone was wondering, do you always get that 72-hour grace period, or would there ever be an instance where maybe they could request that immediately? I didn't know that answer. I usually seen the 72-hour period as being standard, but does anyone know?
Yes, you would get the 72 hours.
Okay, great. So you always have that time to go, little bit of time to
Sure.
go.
And I read, don't give it early, just wait until the end of that 72 hours.
Use all your time.
Mm-hmm. Great. Virginia, did you want to pop in?
Sure. We have lots of questions. We had a couple relating to DACA recipients and whether there's a need to update permits when they expire. I didn't know the answer to that.
Okay, so for DACA, you would have to be renewing that often whenever it does expire. And so DACA, remember, is not a status, it's just a parole, allowing you to stay in the United States and to work under that time. So if they do have that expiring, then you would want to get proof that they've renewed that. And make sure that they don't let that lapse, because then otherwise that could be an immigration problem.
Thank you.
We also had some questions about how the employer figures out kind of what's a private area that they would need a warrant to enter versus a public area. I know that can probably be pretty gray and just dependent on every employer's physical workplace, but any kind of tips on how to define what's private, where they can say, hey, we need a warrant for you to access this area.
I'd say look to where you let a client or a customer walk in, right? If you wouldn't let a client or a customer walk into that area, it's restricted, it's private. So, make sure you label. And as a business owner, you could label different areas where you want to have restricted access, where you don't want the general public to have access to. I mean, obviously places like parking lots and your lobby, those are public areas, obviously. But once you get into back offices or even manufacturing areas or production areas, that's not a place where you'd want the general public to wander back into for various reasons. So you can label those as restricted.
Sure. Anything you need a key or a key fob would be off limits.
Someone gave the example of a restaurant, or I'm thinking of like a fast food establishment. So there's, places where employees or customers can come in, sit down and eat. And then I'd imagine kind of behind that counter where you have employees only and they're cooking or taking orders, that there'd be an argument that that's private and you would need that warrant to access.
Sure. Yes. And then keep in mind the warrant will be maybe a specific room or a specific file. So it should be narrowly tailored. It shouldn't just say, go and look around anywhere in this business. And the difference is there are some businesses like fast food where it is open and you can actually see the employees. Whereas if you had one that's only a reception and people are in offices, that might be a little bit different. So you would want to have especially extra training for people where the employees are going to be visible so that they're not scared and reacting, and they're knowing to remain calm as well. And you don't have to tell the officer if the employee is working that day. You don't have to leave the officer to them also.
And then someone was asking if they think that ICE is overstepping or maybe going outside of the warrant. How do you handle that situation? Do you just kind of politely tell them that you object and take note of that, or what's the best approach there?
Yes, I would agree. Definitely take note, write that down. If you haven't called legal counsel yet, you would want to do that. So in case they do it, then you could say later, if it was an unlawful search, then anything that was a result of that search might not be able to be used in evidence later. So, do your best, write it down, film it if you have to. That would be my recommendation. And if I was going to give one piece of advice that I had read about when we're doing any immigration application, whether it's temporary visa, current, past, the applicants are required to notify USCIS within 10 days if they move. Now I just looked it up yesterday, and it's stating that if they don't do that, there could be a $5,000 fine, up to 30 days in jail, or they could even be deported. So a lot of what USCIS and the administration is doing is taking maybe old laws and bringing those back, or actually enforcing them. Maybe they've already been on the books and they weren't enforced. But that's one thing I would tell all your employees, if you do know that they are non-citizens, would be to update USCIS. A lot of people forget about that and they don't notify them. Or even if their case was approved a long time ago, you want to keep that, because part of the new registration process is that if you are not already registered, which you would be as a citizen or someone who's gone through immigration, they're wanting people to register and notify USCIS that they're here. So that's kind of related to that, and they're looking for ways to help reduce the number of people here illegally. So just keep that in mind.
We have a lot of I-9 related questions. I had one looking for some guidance about how to fill out the I-9 with respect to whether or not an employee needs a translator. Apparently there's been, I guess, a change on the new form. That might not be something we can answer live here and have to get back to someone, but.
Yeah, I believe there's still a translator section on there where if somebody helped them to fill out the form, that they would attest to that on the I-9 itself. So they need some kind of translator help them fill it out. Just make sure that they're entering their information on there as well, and you're checking that box that somebody helped them complete the form.
And if someone didn't help them, is there a box to say that someone, whether or not a translator was needed? I think that might have been a more specific question.
I think that's when the form changed, now that that's in supplement A. You can call into CEA's phone line, but my understanding is you don't have to fill out supplement A unless it applies to you.
Great, thank you.
You could always go to the USCIS I-9 page, and then again, they have facts, they have instructions. So as we mentioned, a lot of these things are changing often, and this presentation could be outdated. So you want to always go there and check for the latest and make that a practice.
Yeah, it's a good point. Keep in mind this information is accurate as of 1:03 today. So
Got the CEA information, so you can email us at ceainfo@employers.org. You can call us at 800-399-5331 if you didn't feel that your question got answered by us today. You also have a copy of the slides when you registered today. Jennifer Grady's information is right there on the third slide in. You can reach out to her directly for some additional questions. I know Jennifer's going to be reaching out and sending out some more information, and for everybody who is on here today, we'll be sending you a copy of the recording. So again, thank you to Jennifer, appreciate it. Eli for putting together a great presentation, Juliana, Virginia for handling over 80 questions that came in throughout this, and to all the hundreds of people who are on here today, thank you so much. We're glad we were able to provide you, I hope, with a little bit of peace of mind. We're here to provide you with more. Just give us a call or an email. Thanks, Jennifer. You're awesome.
Thank you. Just remember, stay calm and be prepared.
I like it. I liked your don't panic, be prepared. That was a good one too. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.